I remember the first night. I wandered too far into the forest, the mist curling around the tree trunks like silent ghosts. The air was damp, carrying a faint scent of earth and decayed leaves. Somewhere far off, a flicker of pale light danced between the branches, almost like a signal, almost like it was waiting for me. Every rustle of the underbrush made my heart jump, though the quiet was heavier than any sound. I kept telling myself it was only the wind, or a deer, but the deeper I walked, the more I felt eyes on me, patient and still. My flashlight wavered, catching something just at the edge of vision, a shape that moved like it shouldn't, then froze when I tried to look directly. I felt the fog thicken, pressing it against my skin, muffling my own breath. There was a trail ahead, barely visible, leading to a clearing bathed in strange, silvery light. I thought I was alone until I heard the humming, low and unplaceable, and I realized I wasn't. Something watched, waited, and followed in ways I couldn't understand. My feet refused to turn back, drawn toward the clearing, toward the sound. That's when I saw it. The fog hung low tonight, thick, wet, curling around my ankles, rising in lazy swirls. The path beneath my feet vanished in white. I thought I was alone. The forest was silent, except soft whispers trailed behind me. I paused. A breath caught somewhere between the damp leaves. The whispers stopped, but I felt them just behind my shoulder, teasing, circling. No voice, no figure, just movement in the air. Shadows bent where they shouldn't. Trees leaned, stretched. Branches curled like fingers, pointing at me. I stepped forward, closer to the sound, closer to the bend in the path where darkness pooled. It stopped. The whispering dissolved into a low hum, a vibration more felt than heard, drumming under my skin. I looked around. Empty trunks, still leaves. The fog swallowed everything past the edge of my vision. And then something mirrored me. Eyes, silver, reflecting the fog. The moon me, impossible eyes staring, unmoving. My heartbeat whispered too loud in my chest. I blinked. They were still there. I stepped closer. The air thickened, pressing against my throat, damp and cold. The hum deepened, sinking with the pulse in my veins. I reached the edge of the shadow. It didn't flinch. It didn't breathe. It simply watched, reflecting, learning. Leaves shivered underfoot. The forest held its breath. I held mine too. I tried to speak. Nothing came. Only the hum, vibrating in my chest, echoing through the mist. I shifted my weight, expecting movement. A flicker, a bending of light, a ripple in the fog. Not wind, not a trick of the moon. I inched forward, and it did too. Exactly. Every step mirrored. I swallowed, cold pressed into my lungs. A faint metallic taste lingered. A twig snapped behind me. Or maybe it didn't. The forest was impossible to trust. I turned. Nothing, but the hum grew stronger. A vibration through the soles of my feet, up into my chest. A rhythm that matched mine. And the eyes, still watching, still unblinking. I wanted to run. I couldn't. I was anchored by the soft, eerie awareness that I was not alone. The shadows shifted, just slightly, enough to hint at motion where none should be. A breeze? No. The air was still. Only the fog moved, curling, stretching, whispering in the gaps of silence. The figure stepped closer. No sound, no weight, just presence, a reflection of me, or perhaps something older, waiting. I couldn't look away. And even as the fear settled into my bones, I realized it wasn't just watching. It was patient. I exhaled. Mist swallowed my breath. The figure held its gaze. And then, just as suddenly, the whispering returned, faint, teasing, soft behind me, closer than before. I didn't turn. I didn't move. I let the fog wrap around me, let the hum vibrate through my chest. And I waited because I knew someone or something was there, always watching. Night draped itself over the forest, thick and quiet, except for the faint crunch of my footsteps on damp earth. A light appeared, faint, flickering, between the trees. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat just out of reach. I slowed, drawn toward it. It shimmered ahead, teasing me. Every step I took, it moved slightly farther. Closer. Farther. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't a lantern. Too steady. Too deliberate. Too wrong. The fog curled around my ankles, clinging. I could smell damp pine, wet soil, something faintly metallic in the air. The forest seemed to lean toward the light. I stepped forward. It moved again. A flicker here. A glimmer there. Shifting, teasing, almost alive. I strained my eyes. Shapes moved behind the trees, but when I focused, nothing. The silhouette appeared. Pale, thin, standing perfectly still. It didn't move as I approached. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. I froze. The fog thickened, curling at my waist. The light pulsed faintly, as though aware of my heartbeat. Branches brushed my arms, soft and slow. The forest seemed to be holding its breath with me. The silhouette remained. I tried to step closer. It mirrored nothing, yet its presence pressed against my skin. A weight, a subtle pull. The flickering light danced over leaves. Every shadow around it stretched, twisted. I caught glimpses of shapes I didn't recognize. The air was still, too still, and yet the forest whispered in a language I couldn't hear. I blinked. The figure hadn't moved. But the light, it seemed to pulse faster now, teasing. I wanted to call out, a name, anything, but my voice caught, swallowed by the fog. Each step I took, the figure's pale outline remained, a perfect statue in the mist. I realized it wasn't just standing, it was waiting. The smell of wet earth grew stronger. Something else lingered beneath it, faint, metallic, like the forest itself was bleeding. I moved closer again, closer to the light, closer to the figure, and then the light flickered one last time. Still, gone, the figure remained. A silence pressed down on me, thick and almost tangible. The forest held its secrets, whispering just beyond hearing. I could feel it watching, breathing, waiting. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. I only let the fog wrap around me. And I waited because the figure knew I was here. The forest tightened around me tonight. Leaves clung to boots. Branches brushed my arms like slow, deliberate fingers. Every step I took, I heard it, crunching, soft, shifting. Behind me, I stopped. The sound paused, then resumed, perfectly timed with my own steps. I turned. Nothing. Empty trunks. Fog curling around roots. No one there. The path narrowed. The air felt thicker. Cold pressed against the back of my neck. Footsteps followed. Closer this time. A rhythm. Not mine. I tried to move faster. So, did it. Every sprint mirrored. Every stumble anticipated. The branches scraped harder, scratching against my sleeves. My legs, a soft rasp in the air. The forest was closing in. I stopped again, frozen, heart hammering. The sound ceased. Silence swallowed everything. So heavy, it pressed against my chest. The fog stilled. Leaves hung in the air. I turned slowly. Still nothing. Then, from somewhere deep in the trees, a faint breath, or maybe more than a breath, a presence just beyond seeing, watching, waiting. I moved forward, careful. Every leaf underfoot screamed my location. Branches twisted like hands trying to grab at me. The footsteps started again, faint, patient, almost playful. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to know who or what was following. The forest seemed alive. Each rustle, each whisper, synchronized with my pulse. Cold air wrapped around me. I felt my skin prickle under unseen eyes. And then it stopped, as if the world itself paused. The silence was heavier than fear. I could almost hear my own heartbeat echoing into the dark. I moved forward, step by careful step. The crunch of leaves behind me felt like a warning. I didn't look back. I couldn't, but I could feel it. The forest, the footsteps, all around me, patient, waiting for the next move. Mist clung to my legs tonight, ankle deep at first, curling like smoke around my boots. By the time I reached the deeper path, it rose to my waist, thick and suffocating. I could barely see the ground. The trees blurred, ghostly shapes twisting in the fog. Every step sounded hollow, though nothing seemed underfoot. Then eyes, glowing, briefly, unblinking, peering from the fog. I froze. My chest tightened. I held my breath, listening to the forest inhale around me. I stepped closer. They vanished. No trace. No rustle. Just a lingering sense of being watched. I moved again. The fog shifted with me, curling, pushing, as if it were alive. And the eyes returned. Closer this time, glaring from behind twisted trunks. I blinked, and they were gone. A trick of light? A reflection in the mist? I wanted to believe that, but the forest felt patient, waiting, hunting slowly. I could hear the faintest snap of a twig. Then nothing. The air pressed against my skin, damp and cold. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, loud enough to echo in the fog. I stepped sideways. The eyes appeared again, fleeting, just at the edge of my vision, a pale glow between the trunks, vanishing when I tried to stare. I reached out, half expecting to touch the mist. It moved around my fingers like water, slippery, elusive, alive. A branch scraped across my arm. I jumped. No one there. Only the fog, swirling, hiding. Every movement of the forest felt synchronized with mine. Leaves whispered in a rhythm I didn't understand. I was alone and yet not. The eyes lingered somewhere ahead, watching, waiting, unblinking, patient. I tried to force my legs to move faster, but the mist slowed me, wrapping tighter with every step. The forest held me in its grasp. I stopped, breath fogging in the cold air. Eyes, or whatever they were, flickered and vanished, and the silence that followed was heavier than the fog. It pressed into my chest, a quiet dread that seeped into my bones. I walked on, careful, slow, listening for the eyes to return. And somewhere, just beyond the mist, I knew they were still there, patient, watching, waiting for me to stumble. I didn't turn back. I didn't look for them. But the forest seemed to breathe me in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had those eyes had been here all along, just beneath the fog, patient. Moonlight spilled across the forest floor tonight, silver on wet grass, pooling in patches between gnarled roots. I followed the path, breath shallow, every sense taut. Then the trees opened. A clearing, small, quiet, almost serene. And yet something in the air made my skin prickle. At the center, a shape stirred. From afar, it seemed human, just a shadow, a flicker of movement. I stepped closer. Curiosity tugged against fear. Closer, closer. The figure didn't move like a person. Its head turned slowly, too fast. Snapped. The motion impossible. I froze. Pale light glinted off damp patches of skin, or maybe fabric. I couldn't tell. Fog curled around it, thick, swallowing edges, twisting perception. The clearing smelled of wet earth, moss, and something faintly metallic, like blood or rust. My own pulse thrummed, echoing too loud in the quiet. It watched me. No blink, no breath I could see. Only that impossible turn, the unnatural stillness. I felt my hands tremble. The moonlight painted shadows across the grass, stretching, reaching toward me. The figure remained, patient, waiting. I inched forward. The smell of damp and iron grew stronger. The grass beneath my boots whispered with every step. And then a sound, soft, a scrape, almost accidental. The clearing itself seemed alive, responding to the presence of the figure. I blinked. It snapped its head again, faster this time. Impossible. Inhuman. The fog shifted, wrapping around my legs, tickling, hiding. Leaves whispered faintly, brushing against each other without wind. I could feel something in the edges of my vision, movement just beyond clarity. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn. But I couldn't. The clearing held me. The figure held me. The pale shape stepped, or maybe I stepped toward it. It didn't matter. Its gaze followed, perfect, unblinking. and every instinct I had screamed to leave, but my legs were slow, hesitant. I realized it wasn't human. Not fully. The way it moved, the way it paused, the way it waited. Moonlight reflected off damp eyes or mirrored surfaces, catching the silver of the fog. Every shadow in the clearing twisted, reaching, bending. I was small in comparison. I exhaled. Cold air wrapped my lungs. The clearing smelled of wet earth and something older, something patient. The figure stayed still. Impossible stillness. Waiting, always waiting. I finally stepped back. The fog curled between us, hiding the ground, hiding the edges of clearing. The shape didn't follow. It didn't move. It simply watched. I didn't look back as I left. I didn't dare. But the image lingered behind my eyelids. The impossible turn. The patient gaze. The clearing, hiding its secret. The pines tonight, they hummed. Not leaves in the wind. Not branches brushing. A vibration beneath my feet. Low, steady, like the forest itself had a pulse. I paused, held my breath. The hum matched my heartbeat, or perhaps my heartbeat matched it. Mist curled around the base of the trees, cool and damp against my skin, rising in lazy spirals. The hum deepened as I moved, resonating through my chest, into my bones. Something unseen was here, watching, waiting. Every step I took seemed measured, mirrored by the rhythm in the air. The smell of pine and wet bark was stronger than usual, faintly metallic, almost electric. I could feel it prickling along my arms. I stopped again. Listened. The hum didn't stop. It pulsed beneath me, around me, inside me. A shadow shifted between the trees. Soft, almost imperceptible. It didn't move like a person, more like the forest itself had bent. A shape forming an awareness of me. The vibration deepened. Synchronized. It tugged at my senses, sinking to my pulse, to my breath. I realized my own heartbeat had slowed to match it. I stepped forward. Mist swirled around my legs, wrapping them like tendrils. The shadow stretched, bent, moved with me. I couldn't tell if I was following it, or it was following me. Leaves rustled, though the air was still. Twigs pressed underfoot, soft, deliberate. Every sound echoed in the hum, magnified, internalized. I sensed presence everywhere. Eyes just beyond vision, waiting. The forest was breathing with me, around me and for me. I exhaled. Cold air wrapped my chest. The hum vibrated through my lungs, through my teeth, through the soles of my boots. The shadow remained, silent, perfectly still. Watching with patience I could feel rather than see. I moved slower, every step measured, every breath mirrored by the vibration in the pines. And even as fear rose, it was hypnotic. The forest pulsed with life I couldn't name. The hum seeped into me, and I realized I wasn't just being watched. I was part of it now. The mist thickened, soft, cold, endless. The vibration deepened, a rhythm that would not let me go. And through it all, the shadow waited. Patient, silent, and unseen. The forest tonight was still, too still. No breeze stirred the leaves, no branches swayed. And yet they rustled, soft, deliberate, brushing against each other. Not random, not wind. Something alive in the edges of vision. I paused, heart tight in my chest. The mist curled around my ankles, cold and damp. The rustling followed me, soft footsteps of leaves without feet. Shadows flickered at the corners of my sight. I turned, and nothing was there. Just fog curling, bending, hiding. The forest felt aware. Every movement I made seemed mirrored, studied. A presence in the stillness, patient, predator-like. Twigs snapped underfoot, though I was careful. Soft, almost mocking, as if the ground itself were alive. Leaves shifted in silence, brushing, whispering, disappearing when I tried to focus. A figure? Perhaps. A shadow? Could be. Something elongated, pale, just beyond the clarity of my eyes. The smell of wet earth pressed into my nose. Faintly metallic, damp pine mixing with something older, sharper. I shivered. I moved forward. The rustling followed. Closer now, brushing my legs, wrapping around the edges of my awareness. Soft footsteps, soft air, soft threat. The mist thickened, hiding shapes, hiding motion, and yet every so often a glimmer, white, pale, reflective between the trees. I blinked. The shape was gone. Leaves whispered as if laughing at my fear. The forest breathed slowly around me, synchronized with my pulse. I stopped. Every rustle sharpened. Every shadow leaned closer. The silence between movements stretched impossibly long. Branches pressed against my skin as I passed. Cold, wet, impossibly gentle and deliberate. The forest was alive in a way I couldn't name. A hunter waiting. Patient. Watching. The rustling slowed. A single leaf fell behind me, though the air was still. I didn't turn. I didn't dare. And then it stopped entirely. The forest held its breath. The fog lingered, thick and suffocating. The shadows settled, waiting for my next move. I walked on, careful, slow, small, listening for the rustle to return, feeling eyes in the mist, in the trees, in the air around me, alone but not alone. The forest was alive, and I was under its watchful, patient gaze. The fog tonight was thicker, clinging to my legs, curling around my waist. Every step I took seemed swallowed before it could reach the ground. And then I saw it, pale, elongated, standing perfectly still in the mist, too still to be human. Its shape mirrored me, subtly, exactly, like a reflection in a warped mirror. I froze, heart thundering. I could feel its presence rather than see it. Every movement of mine echoed in its silence. The forest held its breath with me. Leaves whispered underfoot, though there was no wind. Branches pressed softly against my arms, guiding me or warning me. I stepped forward. It stepped forward. Slow, calculated, every motion mirrored. The pale figure didn't speak. It didn't blink. It simply watched, absorbing me, learning me. The mist swirled around its ankles, silver by moonlight, twisting shadows across the damp ground. It was patient, immovable, waiting. I tried to move faster. It matched me. Every glance, every small hesitation, reflected in its posture. The forest seemed alive in response. Rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and soft vibrations in the fog. It wasn't just following me. It was studying the rhythm of me, sinking to my breath. I wanted to run, but my legs trembled too much. The figure didn't chase. It didn't need to. It only waited silent and perfect. A twig snapped behind me. I whirled. Nothing. Only fog curling back into itself, swallowing shapes, hiding presence. The air smelled of wet pine and cold earth, faintly metallic. A shiver ran down my spine, and the figure still mirrored me. I realized then it wasn't just behind me. It was everywhere I looked. A pale reflection, patient, waiting for me to falter. I exhaled slowly. The mist pressed against my chest, curling into my lungs. My heartbeat echoed in the fog. I didn't dare look away. I didn't dare turn my back, because if I did, I knew it would step closer. Patient, learning, perfectly still, waiting. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. Leaves lay still, untouched by wind. The fog hugged the forest floor, curling around roots and rocks. Then a sound, crackling, sharp like broken radio static. It bounced through the branches, echoing, twisting around the trunks. I froze. The sound wasn't natural. It hummed, buzzed, alive in the air, brushing against my ears, crawling up my spine. I followed it, step by careful step. The mist thickened, wrapping around my ankles, around my legs, slowing me. The trees seemed to lean closer, twisting just out of the corner of my vision. Shadows danced across the fog, bending unnaturally, reaching for me. The static pulsed, guiding me deeper. I could feel it vibrating under my boots, through my teeth, through my chest. A branch snapped above me. The crack was deafening in the silence. I looked up. Nothing. Only shadows shifting, unseen, deliberate. The fog thickened around my face. I could taste the dampness. Metallic, like iron in the air. The sound shifted, crackled closer, then farther. A rhythm I couldn't follow but couldn't ignore. I strained to see through the mist. Shapes moved between the trunks. Quick, fleeting, gone before I could focus. I stepped forward. The static grew louder, sharper. A vibration that wasn't just sound. It was a pressure in my chest. A presence I could feel as much as hear. Leaves brushed my arms. Branches pressed at my legs. And the forest watched. Patient, silent. I blinked. A figure or shadow shifted in the corner of my vision. Gone before I turned my head. The static hummed again, now almost gentle, drawing me further into the fog. Every nerve in my body screamed to stop. I didn't stop. I followed, step by careful step, guided by sound, pulled by rhythm. The mist thickened. The branches pressed closer. The forest held its breath. And somewhere in the distance, the static whispered, calling me deeper, always deeper. The moon was low tonight. Silver light spilled across the forest floor, long and uneven. My shadow stretched in front of me, tall and distorted. Then it moved, not with me, not as it should. A flick, a twitch, a motion independent of my own. I froze. The air pressed against my skin, damp and heavy. Leaves whispered beneath my boots, though there was no wind. I turned. Nothing. Branches hung motionless. Shadows folded back into the fog. The shadow stretched again, twisting on its own, crawling along the ground like liquid darkness. I could feel eyes on me. Not the forest, someone else. My heartbeat throbbed in my ears. Step by careful step, I moved forward. The shadow didn't follow, at least not like before. It moved against me, against the rules of light and form. I whispered, but my voice caught in my throat, a soft exhale in the cold air, though no one was near. Something, or someone, watched through me. Branches brushed my arms. Leaves crunched softly beneath boots. And still, the shadow stretched, shifted, breathed independently. I tried to stop looking. Couldn't. Every flicker of movement drew my gaze back. It was learning me, mocking me. The fog thickened, curling around my legs, hiding shapes. My own shadow felt wrong beneath my feet. Too long, too alive. I moved faster. The shadow mirrored nothing, yet followed. Every step I took, it slithered differently. An imitation, a predator. Cold pressed against my neck. I shivered. Branches grazed my arms like warning hands. Leaves whispered with movement I couldn't see. I spun. Nothing. Only the shadow on the ground. Still twisting. Still moving without me. The forest seemed to pulse in rhythm with my fear. Every leaf, every branch, every wet patch of moss, alive. Watching. Waiting. I exhaled. Fog wrapped around me. Hiding. Separating. The shadow stayed. Stretching, shifting, impossible and patient. And I realized I was not alone, not in the forest, not even in my own reflection. It moved. I stayed frozen. The night swallowed the sound of my breath, and the shadow waited. The trail ahead tonight, it felt wrong. The leaves lay untouched. Twigs rested in impossible stillness. No wind stirred the forest, yet nothing moved. I stepped forward. The crunch of earth was swallowed. The path looked frozen, suspended in time. Every footstep echoed unnaturally in the silence. Then footprints appeared behind me. Small, deliberate, perfectly spaced. Though I had walked alone. I froze, heart hammering. Mist curled at my ankles, thickening with every inhale. The forest seemed to lean closer. Silent trunks stretched upward, bending in shadows that shouldn't exist. I tried to move faster. Every step echoed in the stillness. The footprints followed, not matching my own, but hauntingly deliberate. The air was cold, sharp against my lungs. Metallic faintness, like iron or something older, lingered in the fog. Every exhale vanished immediately, swallowed by the frozen path. Branches pressed against my arms. Twigs snapped softly beneath boots. And somewhere beyond the fog, something shifted. Not sound, presence. Patient, waiting. I dared to glance behind. The footprints stretched back into the fog. No figure. No shadow. only the suggestion of motion, alive in the silence. I moved again. The forest seemed to breathe slowly, deliberately, a hollow rhythm, syncing with my heartbeat. I was trapped between the sound of my own pulse and the quiet of the frozen path. Mist thickened at waist height. I could barely see the edges of the trail. Shapes bent us out of focus. Branches, shadows, something more. The footprint stayed. Following, watching. A reminder that I was never truly alone. I exhaled. The cold wrapped around my chest, tightening. The path stretched before me, frozen, endless in appearance. And behind me, patience lingered. Step by careful step, I moved forward. Eyes unseen, presence palpable, breath unseen in the fog. The forest held me in suspended time. The path frozen. The waiting endless. The fog tonight clung close, curling around my legs and rising like smoke. I felt exposed yet unseen. Every shadow seemed alive. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. Just there, gone when I turned. Shifting, twisting, impossible shapes bending the edges of the fog. I blinked. A glimpse of something pale. A branch too long. A shadow too sharp. Every glance brought new distortions. The forest seemed to mock my eyes. What I saw wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right. Shapes mimic life, but wrong. Too slow, too fast, just beyond understanding. I took a step forward. The fog wrapped around my ankles, thick and damp. Leaves whispered underfoot. Something else whispered back. Movement flickered again. In my peripheral vision, a figure, a branch, a reflection. It vanished when I tried to focus. I breathed slowly, tried to ground myself in reality, but the forest kept bending. Every glance brought a new trick. The light shifted. Shadows stretched. I stepped sideways. Movement flickered again. Always at the edge. Always wrong. Branches scraped against my arms. Leaves whispered without wind. Something followed. Patient. Waiting. Watching. The fog thickened further. Shapes bent and twisted, forming illusions that weren't quite real. Every step I took, the periphery shifted with me. I couldn't trust my eyes, or my feet, or the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I exhaled, forcing calm. But even still the flickers returned, just there at the edge, teasing me. Shadows that weren't shadows. Figures that weren't figures. I moved forward carefully. Every glance brought new distortions. The forest seemed alive in its subtle manipulations. I was alone, yet watched, controlled, and through it all, the fog whispered around me, shaping perception, shaping fear. The flickers at the periphery waited for me to stumble. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I only let the forest fold around me and moved, step by careful step, through the shifting edges of my own senses. The fog tonight was thick, clinging to my legs, curling higher with every step. It smelled of wet earth, pine, and something faintly metallic. Cold wrapped around my skin, pressing into my lungs. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. But then I felt it, breathing, soft, synchronized with mine. Not behind me, not beside me, around me, inside the fog itself. I paused, heart hammering. The forest held its breath. And I realized the fog was alive. Every inhale of mine was echoed, a whisper of breath against my neck, a faint vibration in the air that matched my pulse. Leaves rustled, branches brushed my arms, and in the fog, shapes twisted, bending at impossible angles. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their awareness. I stepped forward. The fog followed, curling around my ankles higher, wrapping my legs, soft and alive. It mirrored my movements. Every step, every shift of weight. I tried to focus. The shapes in the fog teased recognition. Faces? Figures? Something else? They faded the moment I looked directly. A branch scraped my arm. Cold, damp, deliberate. I jumped, exhaling sharply, and the fog pressed closer. The breathing continued. Soft, patient, echoing mine. The forest itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of my chest. I moved forward slowly, step by careful step, The fog wrapped tighter, almost gentle, yet the presence within it was patient, waiting. I couldn't see it. I couldn't name it, but I could feel it, matching my pace, sinking to my heartbeat, always there. I exhaled. Cold mist filled my lungs, and I understood I was never truly alone. The fog breathed with me, around me, through me, and I had no choice but to move with it. The forest tonight felt hollow. Every step I took echoed deeper than it should. Leaves, twigs, dirt, all amplifying my movements into cavernous emptiness. I paused. The echo lingered, stretching, folding back on itself. A rhythm that wasn't natural. Mist clung to my legs, curling higher with every breath. Cold pressed into my chest. The forest exhaled around me, slow, deliberate. A hollow sound followed me. Soft, cavernous, almost alive. Not behind me, not beside me, everywhere at once. I moved forward. Every step created another echo. Deeper, longer. The forest seemed to breathe me in. Branches pressed against my arms. Leaves whispered underfoot. The hollow sound pulsed with my heartbeat. Slow, patient, relentless. I stopped. The silence between echoes was heavier than anything I had felt before. The fog wrapped around my legs, higher, almost tactile in its pressure. I blinked. Shapes shifted just beyond focus. Twisted trunks, leaning shadows, impossible angles. The forest seemed aware, watching, waiting. I stepped again. The echoes followed, multiplying, stretching. Each footstep seemed to call something deeper in the mist, something patient, something unseen. I held my breath. The hollow sound reverberated through the air, through the fog, through me. I could feel it in my chest, inside my lungs, under my skin. The branches whispered along my arms. Twigs pressed beneath my boots. And through it all, the hollow sound lingered. Patient, watching, waiting. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. The forest held its breath. The echoes stretched endlessly. And I knew whatever followed me, whatever created that hollow sound, was patient, silent, and still present just beyond the fog. The clearing returned tonight. Moonlight spilled across damp grass, silvering every blade. Shadows stretched long and thin, twisting across the edges of the fog. And there it was, the shadow, mimicking me, every movement, every tremble of my hands, reflected perfectly on the ground. I froze. The fog curled around my ankles, soft, cold, almost gentle. But the shadow, it wasn't gentle. It pressed into my awareness, into the spaces I couldn't see. Leaves whispered underfoot. Branches brushed against my arms. And the clearing held its breath with me. I stepped forward. The shadow followed, exact and unblinking. Every footstep I took, it stretched in time with me. Every shift of weight mirrored. I tried to move faster. It mirrored faster. No delay, no imperfection. Perfect, patient, impossible. Mist curled higher, wrapping the trees and trunks in soft coils. Shapes bent at the edge of my vision. Not just shadows, not just trees. Something watching, waiting. I exhaled. The cold pressed into my lungs. My heartbeat throbbed in my chest, echoing across the clearing. The shadow trembled with me, perfectly synchronized. I looked down at my hands, and the shadow mirrored the slight quiver of my fingers. A reflection, yes, but wrong. Something alive behind it. The clearing seemed endless tonight, edges blurred by fog. The shadow remained patient, unmoving, yet impossibly aware. I wanted to run. I wanted to vanish into the trees. But my legs didn't obey. The clearing held me. The shadow held me. A leaf shifted in the corner of my vision. Branches bent slightly, unnatural. The air smelled of damp earth and cold pine, metallic faintness lingering. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. The shadow mirrored every inhale, every exhale, every shiver, and the fog whispered softly around us. I didn't turn my back. I didn't step backward. I just stood, small, trembling, watching the reflection of myself, knowing something in the clearing was not only observing, but learning, patient, endless. The forest floor stirred tonight. Leaves shifted softly, though the air was still. Twigs snapped faintly, almost impatiently beneath unseen weight. I paused, heart thudding. Rustling grew louder. All around me, pressing closer. Branches brushed my arms, cold and deliberate. Shadows bent unnaturally at the edge of my vision. I turned. Nothing. Only fog curling around roots, swallowing shapes. The rustling followed. Step by slow, careful step. I felt it closer now. Something alive, patient, stalking. Mist rose around my legs. Every movement echoed softly in the silence. The forest breathed against me. It was waiting, watching, and somehow knowing me. I exhaled, trying to steady. But the rustling continued. Closer. Soft footsteps that weren't mine. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I only moved forward, step by careful step, with the forest holding an impatient breath. Glowing eyes appeared behind a tree tonight. Pale, piercing, unblinking, or blinking too slowly to measure. I stopped, heart hammering. The fog curled around my ankles, thick and damp. Branches pressed against my arms. Leaves whispered beneath my boots, soft, deliberate. I tried to blink. The eyes didn't. They observed, patient and silent, unyielding. I stepped sideways. The tree remained between us. The eyes didn't waver. They followed, patient, unblinking. The air smelled of wet earth, pine, metallic faintness. The forest seemed to hold its breath with me. I moved forward carefully. Each glance drew the eyes back to me, timeless, inhuman, relentless. I didn't run. I didn't dare. I only moved, step by measured step, while the eyes waited, patient, watching, always there. A massive tree stood tonight, familiar as ever, its trunk thick, gnarled, roots curling into the earth. I looked again. Gone. The space where it had been was empty, fog curling unnaturally over the ground. The forest didn't obey the rules I knew. Branches twisted where none should. Shadows bent, stretched, dissolved. I stepped forward. Mist wrapped around my legs. Leaves whispered softly, almost laughing. Something moved in the corner of my vision. A figure? A shadow? I blinked. Nothing. The tree should have been there. It wasn't, and the forest watched. Patient, impossible, waiting. I walked on slowly. Every step pressed against the edges of reason. Fog rose, hiding, revealing shapes that weren't real. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The forest bent around me. Rules were gone. Only observation remained. The forest was still. No wind. No movement. And yet, breath. I felt it brush my neck, icy, soft, deliberate. No wind carried it. No figure revealed itself. I whirled. Nothing. Only fog curling higher, brushing my legs damp and cold. Leaves whispered beneath boots. Twigs snapped softly. Branches pressed lightly against my arms. The forest felt alive. Watching. Breathing. Synchronizing to my heartbeat. My movements. I exhaled, shivering. The cold pressed deeper. A presence lingered, patient, unseen. Following, waiting. I walked on slowly, step by careful step. The breath remained, soft, icy, constant. And I knew I wasn't alone. Moonlight spilled over the clearing tonight. Shadows stretched long across the grass, bending unnaturally. Figures gathered at the edges. Human, almost, but wrong. Flickering, blurred, just out of focus. I held my breath. The fog curled around my legs, thick and cold. Leaves whispered beneath boots. Branches pressed softly against my arms. The silhouettes moved with the moonlight, almost aware, watching, waiting. I stepped forward. They didn't approach. They didn't retreat. They mirrored my hesitation, patient, deliberate. The air smelled damp, metallic faintness lingering. Every step echoed softly, swallowed by fog. I exhaled slowly. The silhouettes remained. Human but not human. Silent. Observing. I didn't look back. I didn't run. I only moved carefully through the moonlit clearing, aware of eyes on me. Figures just beyond understanding, waiting, patient, impossible. A soft sound followed me tonight. Not from behind. Not beside. But inside the air itself. A scraping. Rhythmic. almost musical. It echoed in my chest more than my ears. Every step I took seemed to synchronize with it. Leaves whispered. Branches brushed against my arms. The fog curled around my legs, damp and clinging. I tried to pinpoint the source. Impossible. The sound moved with me. Patient. Persistent. I stopped. The scraping paused. My chest thumped, loud enough to echo in the stillness. Then it started again. The forest seemed alive. Waiting, watching. Every movement of mine reflected in the rhythm. I exhaled. The mist wrapped around me tighter. Every step I took, the sound followed. Every breath I drew, it echoed back. I didn't look back. I didn't try to escape. I only moved forward, with a scraping in my chest, patient, unseen, eternal. Fog wrapped around me tonight, not just at my ankles, not just around my legs. It climbed, coiled, hugging every movement I made. Shapes emerged, then receded. Familiar, impossible, just beyond recognition. Leaves whispered underfoot. Branches brushed my arms. The forest pressed closer, alive and patient. I tried to focus. Mist teased my sight. Figures formed and dissolved in seconds. The fog clung tighter. A breath tickled my neck. Soft, faint, unseen. The forest synchronized with my pulse, my inhalations, my exhalations. Step by careful step, I moved. The fog clung, and within it shapes waited, watching, patient. I didn't run. I didn't fight. I only let the fog hold me, as it had always been holding me, alive, silent, waiting. Eyes, unblinking, watching me from the mist tonight. I froze. No blink, no movement. They stayed fixed, patient, immovable. The fog curled around my legs, damp and cold. Leaves whispered beneath boots. Branches brushed softly against arms. I moved. The eyes remained. Every step I took, they followed, silent, endless. The forest seemed alive in response. Every shadow bent. Every rustle synchronized to my heartbeat. I tried to look away. Couldn't. The gaze held me. Patient, unblinking, eternal. I exhaled. The fog pressed closer, soft and suffocating. And I realized I was seen, completely, by something that would never look away. Shadows twisted tonight, stretching, bending into impossible shapes. The forest seemed alive, watching, waiting. I sensed movement just beyond perception. Something there, patient, hidden, not human, not entirely. Leaves whispered softly underfoot. Branches grazed my arms. Fog coiled around my legs, damp and cold. I tried to look closer. Shapes flickered, elusive, impossible to grasp. A breath touched my neck. Soft, deliberate, icy. The unseen presence pressed closer, synchronizing with my movements. I moved slowly, step by careful step. Every glance revealed new distortions. Every shadow bent impossibly. I didn't run. I didn't dare. The forest held me. The shapes waited, and something beyond watched, patient, impossible. The clearing stretched before me tonight. Fog swallowed the edges. Moonlight glinted off damp grass, silvering endlessness. I stepped forward. Shadows twisted unnaturally. Shapes pressed against my periphery. Patient, waiting. The fog curled around my legs, higher, thicker. I felt breath against my neck, rustling beneath foot, branches brushing my arms. Every step echoed softly. The clearing had no edges, no end. The horizon dissolved into mist. I realized whatever watched me was still there, patient, eternal, learning, waiting. I exhaled. Cold air pressed against my lungs. The forest breathed with me, through me, around me. I didn't look back. I didn't try to escape. I only moved, small and careful, through the infinite clearing, under the patient gaze of everything unseen. And for the first time, I accepted it. The forest, the fog, the watching shapes. I was part of it now,